You want to get your farm brand and products out there to a larger audience, but you're not sure how, and you think farming influencers might just hold the key. They've got a large, highly engaged audience, so what could possibly go wrong? Well, as it transpires, it's not quite as simple as it seems. So in this video, I'm going to break down whether you should consider using farming influencers, what they can offer your brand, and why you should always think twice before jumping on the bandwagon. Let's get into it. Let me start by giving a little bit of context here. Firstly, I have no issues with influencers or what they do. I've met plenty of influencers here in the UK, and on the whole, they're very nice, genuine people who work bloody hard. Secondly, I'm going to try and be as balanced as possible. I am solely looking at this from a brand perspective and through a marketing lens as to what influencers can do for your business and whether or not you should use them in your marketing. For clarity, there seems to be a bit of a rebrand going on here in the UK where influencers are now calling themselves content creators. I don't know why, but for me, they're one and of the same thing. If you are living off brand deals and ad revenue, you're an influencer. End of. I'm sure plenty of you will have your own thoughts on this, so as always, I'd love to hear your views in the comments section below. As influencers have become more of a thing over the years, there have been a series of rules and guidelines that influencers need to follow, so as consumers, we know when there is a commercial arrangement in place. As a business engaging with influencers, I would strongly recommend that you ensure that these criteria are being met and don't just leave it up to the individual you're working with. And this is where things can get a little bit messy. The two key regulators here in the UK are the Advertising Standards Authority and the Competition and Markets Authority. So in a nutshell, here's how it works. The general principle here is that influencers must make it obvious when their content is an advertisement. This applies if they're being paid in money, gifts, services, trips, or any other benefit to promote a product or service. It must be clear to the average consumer before they engage with the content, so you can't just hide it in a description or at the bottom of a hashtag. Disclosure is needed if 1. The brand has paid the influencer money or in-kind rewards, and 2. The brand has control over the content, e.g. approval, wording, messages, hashtags, all that lovely stuff. But even if there is no direct payment, but the influencer received a gifted product and is posting about it, this is considered a commercial relationship under the Conduct and Markets Authority guidance, and it must be disclosed. In general, influencers in the UK must clearly label any paid for, gifted, or otherwise incentivized content as advertising upfront in plain and obvious language. I will leave it up to you to assess whether these farming influencers are following these rules, but given that trust and credibility are such an important aspect of using influencers, then if they're not being open and transparent with their audience, you're off to a pretty bad start, and quite frankly for me, that's an immediate red flag. As a business, the first question that you need to address is, why do you want to use an influencer? This will depend on numerous factors like what stage your business is at, what goals that you're looking to achieve, or how they fit into a wider campaign, and ultimately, how much money you've got to spend. Influencers in agriculture are typically used for top-of-funnel awareness marketing activities where the goal is to get your brand and product in front of a new audience. They're not typically used for sales or conversions given the high ticket value of products sold onto farms. Very few people are going to trust an influencer so explicitly to go out and spend 160 grand on a new drill, for example. You should be looking to use influencers for top of funnel activities rather than bottom of funnel, kind of like what Fendt did with the release of their new Gen 5 800 series tractors. So in the context of top of funnel activities, let's look at the case for and the case against hiring them. Firstly is reach. The most common argument I hear for using influencers is that they have a new audience we as a business want to target. Brands will say outside our current marketing activities we're trying to reach a new audience or have a new product that we want to promote, and influencers can help us do that. And I can't disagree with that. Many farming influencers do have a sizable, highly engaged audience that know and trust, on the most part, what they say. However, you shouldn't always just look at the headline figures alone, which I'll come on to later. Secondly is authenticity. This feeds directly into the credibility and trust elements of the equation. Most of the farming influencers here in the UK are farmers themselves, or at least live and work on a farm, which makes them very well positioned to pass comment. Farmers listen to other farmers, which instantly gives authentic influencers a degree of credibility. Thirdly is a highly engaged audience. I will of course caveat this with what I mentioned previously about upholding rules and guidance around product promotion, but most influencers have an audience that know and trust what they say. And in farming, that kind of counts for a lot. Farmers are inherently a skeptical bunch, so to have recommendations from a peer or have fellow farmers vouch for your product can mean a lot, as long as it is genuine. So there are areas where influencers can add value, but it's not quite as straightforward as it seems. So here's the flip side of the equation and some other things that you may want to consider. Firstly, audience. One of the biggest mistakes I see brands make when selecting influencers is looking solely at follower count or audience size. This is a trap because even with a large audience, you've no idea who they are. Now, a good example of this is in the world of tractors. There are lots of people out there who love tractors, but how many of them actually have any interest in buying one? A bigger audience isn't always better. You should always prioritize quality over quantity. Look at measurements such as engagement and audience quality over top line numbers. Secondly is it's expensive. As influencers grow their audience and reach, they want to commercialize it and be rewarded for the time and effort that they've put into building that audience. Now, again, I have no issues here, but it's becoming very expensive, especially when you factor in management or agency fees. And for large swathes of agricultural businesses who don't have an infinite marketing budget, the costs can be very prohibitive. Thirdly is a lack of control. I think they call this brand alignment risk, where the influencer's tone, values or conduct don't align with your brand and your partnership could backfire, say. Now, a good example of this, of course, was on Series 4 of Clarkson's Farm when he was buying a tractor, and it put some of the brands in a kind of bad light. And then a few brands started to backtrack and disassociate themselves, and so it's not without its risks. Fourthly, over-commercialization. Now, I've seen this one quite a lot lately, where influencers are promoting multiple products with a lack of brand loyalty, which again raises the question of, are you doing this because you genuinely like the product or because someone has paid you? Now, unless you're prepared to enter into a long-term agreement and some sort of exclusivity with an influencer, which I kind of gather doesn't really happen here in agriculture, then you risk a lack of brand loyalty, which ultimately erodes that trust and credibility in what the influencer is promoting. Fifth is an extension of paid ads. Look, consumers aren't stupid, and many now see influencers' product promos as an extension of paid ads. Whether or not it's explicitly stated, consumers can sniff out a commercial arrangement a mile off. They can easily tell when you've paid or gifted a product, again, which undermines that trust and credibility in what the influencer is actually saying. Lastly is brand building, and I think this is one that a lot of brands miss, is that you shouldn't be outsourcing your brand building efforts to others. You should have the belief, the desire, and the creativity to do it in-house and make it uniquely you. By outsourcing some of these activities, you're going to get the same cookie cutter content from what is a relatively small pool of influencers, which does nothing to differentiate your brands or your products. So my honest advice is this: the vast majority of businesses in agriculture should not be using influencers, because there is a better, more cost-effective way at getting your business and products out there, and it is this: pocket the cash you would have paid an influencer, stop being lazy, and go and do it yourself. Aside from the expense, you have the same opportunities and access to YouTube and any other social media platform as any influencer does. Invest the money into something that you control, that you can manage, and that ultimately works for you rather than continually relying on other people. If you're looking for awareness, then go and film some content and get it out on social media. See what works, see what doesn't. All businesses have customers, so if you're looking for credibility, trust, or authenticity, then go and speak to your existing customer base. The people who are paying you, not the other way around. Ask them to review your products. User-generated content or even employee-generated content they're all on the rise and offer more authenticity and opportunity to build your brand rather than outsourcing it to another face in the industry. I've done this loads of times with brands like Nitrosol, where we went out and spoke with one of their long-standing customers and asked them what they love about the product and why they work with Nitrosol. We didn't pay a penny to James. He was happy to do it because he was genuinely enthusiastic about the product and Nitrosol as a company. Now, he might not be a face within the industry, but he was genuine, authentic, and extremely credible, which in my eyes counts way more than having a big social media following. Invest in yourself and build an asset that can work for you rather than constantly having to outsource it and rely on others. Particularly if you're a small business and don't have a huge marketing budget, I think there are much better, less expensive ways of promoting your business and actually building your brand. That, of course, is just my 2 pence worth, so feel free to leave your thoughts in the comment section below, and if you are looking for how to market your farm business with zero budget, then watch this video here.